Welcome to the Plant-Based Podcast. Did you know that plants are truly amazing? Not only can you grow them and eat them, you can also wear them, drink them, nourish your skin with them, and so much more. Let Ellen and Michael inspire you to love plants as much as they do, as they chat with the movers and shakers in this wonderful plant-based world. So, let's dig in.
Transform your garden the easy way with sponsors of Series 20 of the podcast, Garden on a Roll. It's the perfect solution for beautiful, ready-made garden borders. If you love the look of professionally designed planting but don't have the time, knowledge or patience to plan it yourself, Garden on a Roll has you covered. Each border is expertly designed by award-winning garden designer Anthony Henn, and delivered with a simple, pre-planned, biodegradable template you can roll out and plant in one go. No guesswork, no stress, just follow the instructions and enjoy the results. Whether you're refreshing a tired space or starting from scratch, you'll get a cohesive, seasonal design that works with plants chosen to thrive together and look great all year round. Choose your style and size, and everything you need is delivered to your door. It's planting by numbers. Visit Garden on a Roll today and bring your outdoor space to life. Hi everyone, it's Ellen Mary here. So I've been let loose on the podcast for this episode. As you know, alternate weeks, Michael and I will put out there a solo episode. And this week I am talking to Diana Brocklebank Scott from Creake Abbey, and we're going to be talking about right plant, right place, loads of tips and advice, and also hearing about the Plant Lovers Day that's held in May at Creake Abbey, which is in Norfolk. And it sounds amazing. One year I am absolutely going to get to it. But this is a lovely episode. Diana was an absolute pleasure to chat with, and I hope you enjoy it. So, Diana, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute joy to be here.
I have to just let our listeners know that both Diana and myself are full of cold. So if we begin coughing and spluttering, you will know why. I've pre-warned you. There's a lot of it going around.
Seems unfair in spring when the sun is out, but still, one of those things.
I say get it over and done with now, and then we'll have spring and summer free of germs, and we can be out in the garden.
100%.
So, Diana, I'd love to know more about you and how you got into gardening and being a huge plant lover that you are, and the owner of Creake Abbey and running the Plant Lovers Day as well. So just can you give us a full picture for our listeners, please?
Sure. Well, thank you for asking me on. It's an absolute treat to be here. I moved to Creake Abbey in 2003, which seems like a long time ago. And what I found was an absolutely beautiful Augustinian abbey, which is a ruin managed by English Heritage. And on the side of it is a house that was part of the monks' sort of living quarters and religious area. And that house is what I now live in. I'm super lucky. It was domesticated and made into the most absolutely beautiful home. And we have a wall garden, which is a very sheltered space, and then quite copious gardens around as well. And that was the first time I'd ever had my own garden. I'd lived in Suffolk when I grew up and had a wonderful garden. My mother was a great gardener and plants person. And so, I always wanted to bring up my kids outside in the countryside, in green space. I didn't want to have a situation where they were going out, playing in parks so much. It was better for me for them to run free, which is what I had as a kid in my life. And what I found when I got here was a garden that had some really amazing sort of structural plants and trees, but the rest had kind of all gone wild because the plantswoman who had lived here hadn't actually been gardening here for about 15 years.
Mm.
So there were specimen trees like a Cornus cusa in the corner of the wall garden that is still there today, that
Wow.
is absolutely magnificent. And then in another corner was an Acer, which is just, you know, totally beautiful as well. And it's taken me until now actually to redo the wall garden, and I just planted it up with the help of a garden designer called Hicks and Hart, who are quite new. And I have to say, watching this space take shape and actually become a room, another room, is really exciting. I mean,
Mm.
I've never done that before. But since moving here in 2003, my husband and I were lucky enough to have a set of old Norfolk barns with all the flints and beautiful things that used to be part of the farm. And they were run down and not doing anything. And so I filled them with wonderful small business, everything from antiques, and now we even have studios for sort of reformer Pilates. But in order to drive people to Creake Abbey, I needed to put on various events. And the most famous of the events I put on is the farmers market. But once a year, my absolutely favorite event of all time is this event called Plant Lovers Day. And this year it's on the 16th of May, and we always do it in conjunction with a charity. And this time it's, as it was in the previous 2 years, Priscilla Bacon Hospice, which is a really wonderful end of life hospice in Norwich at the Norfolk and Norwich Hospital. And they work with us to make sure we have enough volunteers on the day. But the crucial thing is that we get to welcome about 26 specialist plant nurseries from across East Anglia, and the owners of those, and they are all small businesses, actually come set up their plants in stalls. So it happens at the same time as Chelsea, so everyone's in plant mode, which is fun. And you come and you do pay an entrance fee, all of which goes to the hospital, to the hospice. But you get access to these remarkable nurseries, which you can speak to the plants men and women and ask them the questions you just generally can't ask anywhere else. So it's incredibly exciting and incredibly beautiful and really good because you find all sorts of unusual plants, things that you've always loved but didn't really know how to look after. You can ask them stuff. So it came from that, and this is actually the 19th year I've done it. I can't really believe it. um
19th year.
yeah, in a row.
Wow.
I know. We've raised about £35,000 for charity so far through this event, which I'm proud of. It was another hospice
Mm.
before that we used to raise the money for. And it's incredibly well attended by devotees of the plant world. And this year I'm trying to broaden it out a little and having a few more sort of nursery plant related but non-nursery businesses like wonderful, really high quality spades and tools, organic peat-free compost, a few other stands like that are part of gardening. You absolutely have to have good materials and good soils to sort of make it even more of a rounded event.
Diana, it sounds absolutely amazing, and I see it every year, and I know all about it. But every year I'm either at Chelsea or away, and I am going to make it almost my life's purpose to get there one day
You will.
because it sounds both amazing, and also I do know some of the amazing, plantsmen and women that do come with their amazing plants there.
Mm, mm,
And this brings me on to what we're going to discuss today before we come back round to the Plant Lovers Day again, is right
mm.
plant, right place. And that's quite kind of tricky sometimes if you pick up a plant in the garden centre and you're not quite sure what you're doing with it. And the label maybe doesn't make much sense, and you haven't really got anyone, an expert to talk to, kind of thing.
Yeah,
And that's what's really wonderful about things like Plant Lovers Day, because you can talk to the person, the people that
exactly.
the growers or the breeders, all of those who know exactly what that plant needs. Um, and just before we go on, it's interesting that you said you have, your Cornus Cusa there in the corner of the
Mm,
garden and it's still there all these years later. That obviously loves where it is. I, some years back, moved to America. So I'm there part of the year and then I'm in England part of the year.
yeah.
And right plant, right place couldn't be more essential because what
Mm,
you think you can grow, what I've been used to growing in England, I cannot grow in North Carolina.
no.
So it's so essential to know the plant and what its requirements are. And that can even trip us experienced gardeners up sometimes. It has done, believe me. So I'd love for you to explain, like, right plant, right place. Like, what does it
Mm.
really mean? Why is it such a fundamental principle in gardening for gardening success?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the most obvious thing that happens is that one falls in love with a plant in a garden center, let's say, and the flower is completely beautiful, or the smell, or something, and you get caught up in the joy, the sheer joy of this beautiful specimen, and you bring it home, and of course you put it where you think it will be wonderful, and it completely dies. So that's the first thing, isn't it? It's a terrible feeling. We all
And
have
we
had
all do
it.
it, but we
Yeah,
all do it, don't we?
exactly.
Even
We all
now,
do it. We
even
all do
now.
it. Exactly. And the thing is, right plant, right place is the mantra. And I believe it was Beth Chatto, who is a bit of a heroine of mine.
Yes.
And of course, she has her amazing garden in not far in Suffolk, or even if it's Essex.
It's
But
Essex,
anyway,
I think.
yeah,
Yes.
Essex. And of course, the dry garden is particularly important now with
Mm.
climate change and so on. So I think although it's a very old concept, I think she was the person who actually coined the phrase right plant, right place. And having done a little bit of research on this, I think her husband, Andrew Chatto, was the original plant researcher, and they worked together as a team. And, and they really understood that a plant will thrive if it actually goes into the right location in terms of soil, in terms of aspect. So we're talking about sunny or shady, and also to do with the weather conditions and the prevailing wind. And we're all in, everywhere we live is unique. So here at Creake Abbey, I have an unbelievably strong prevailing wind. I also am in a frost pocket, and I know that I have fairly neutral soil, but it tends more to the alkaline rather than the acid. So that already allows me to have a very good understanding of the kinds of plants that will work, because it's just so much more than falling in love with this bloom, wonderful as that is. And
Yeah.
of course, there are tricky places in one's garden where you've tried stuff and it doesn't really work. And the great thing about Plant Lovers Day is you can walk up to these people and say,
Mm.
okay, I have this shady, damp place. I do look at it from my kitchen. I really want something that will thrive in it. And hopefully you've gone to a garden which has one of the nurserymen and women who has hostas, let's say. There's a wonderful one called, Melanie Collins of Mickfield Hostas. And, you just ask, which hosta will work in this damp, shady place and give me joy and light. And she'll come up with something that is kind of acid green and absolutely beautiful. And then, of course, you have other lovely things like, we have these wonderful flint walls, which you will know all about from your life in Norfolk. And they are a bit like a snail hotel or a slug, kind of bed and breakfast. And so, you do have to bear that in mind, particularly with hostas. But I mean, you've made an enormously positive decision to buy that plant for the right spot, and
Mm,
then you're much more
absolutely.
likely to have it thrive.
Um, I used to live funny you should say about the Flint. I used to live in a cottage on the coast called Flint Cottage.
Oh yeah,
And yes, the wall, like we had a wall garden as well, and it was Flint, and just about anything we planted out that slugs and snails could eat, it's like they just appeared out of the wall or the
they
bottom of
do.
the wall. Where did
It's
they
a
come from?
nightmare. I know, and in the early evening, if you go out to do some light watering or whatever, I mean, I got to the point where I was just picking them off.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, what am I going to do with all this protein? It's serious.
Feed the chickens.
Yeah, exactly.
So, the right plant, right place, phrase is so completely true. But why do you think we still get caught out by it? Because I do even now. Like even I can still go to a garden center and just see something and oh, that's so beautiful. I think I'll just get
I,
that. And
I
without
know, I know.
thinking about where I'm going to put it or if it's right for my soul, why do we do that?
Well,
What
it's
how do we?
joy. It's about the
Yeah.
joy, isn't it, of finding something unusual and wonderful. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that is actually part of the romance of being, enveloped in your garden. But I do think that when you do get home, it's, what we have to do is the other side of that coin. We actually have to look up what the true origin of that plant is. We
Mhm.
have to go back to actually see, did that plant originate in Southeast Asia? Does it actually want that kind of hot climate? And if it does, then you're going to have to brace yourself because it may not be the perfect environment for it. But you know, uh, at least you can go back and if you're doing a big project like I have been with the wall garden, you can actually make sure that those plants are the ones that have the right origin story. And in my wall garden, as with all spaces, some are shady and damp and some are warm and hot at the base of
Mm.
the south facing wall. And I mean, actually, hostas can go in sunny borders, can't they? I have discovered
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I mean, different varieties of the same plant, can tolerate very different things. But I think the little extra bit of work and research to sort of go back and have fun with it and work out where that plant originally came from is actually what you need to do, and is
I
fun.
agree. Absolutely. Where did the plant originate from? And also getting to know more about the plant that you're buying or that you want to buy is actually really good way of educating yourself about plants and really getting to know your plant, like feeling
Yeah,
a bit connected to it if you like. Like I
yeah,
love kind of the wellness side of it. And I
me
like to
too.
know my plants and I just feel like when I know a lot about it and understand it almost like a person,
Yeah.
then I don't know, you feel more connected to your garden
Yeah,
perhaps.
definitely. It is a sort of well-being journey, I find.
Mm.
I mean, sitting in your garden, knowing you've had that relationship with it and you've done that extra research, definitely, I do talk to my plants. I mean, do you talk to plants?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They know
Exactly.
all my secrets.
Exactly. They never answer you back. They're always
No.
loyal. It's just fantastic. Oh, but I did enjoy your podcast on AI, plant talking. I mean,
Oh,
that was
did you?
wild. I
At
mean,
Cambridge Botanic Garden.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
that was that was quite something, I have to say. But yes, if my hosta did reply to me, I would be a little shocked to be fair. I wonder what it would say. You
And this
beastly
is,
woman, you've put me in the wrong place.
yes, for goodness sake, move me. Stop giving me so much water. I know it says keep me moist, but I don't need that much.
Exactly, exactly. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I agree. Having a relationship with plants and with your garden in a more wider way is actually central to one's well-being. And that really goes back to, having being lucky enough to have my children who are now, quite grown up, 21, 19, and 17, in the countryside and surrounded by plants. And I think they all love plants as a result. So that's a great thing.
And how very lucky they are, because there's so
Yeah.
very many people that do not have access to green space, whether it's their own or if they're living in a city. It's a very, very brief story, and it's not exactly about a garden, but it is about nature and kind of
Mm.
understanding what's outside of a city. Many years ago, I was on the Norfolk Broads on a boat, obviously, or
Yeah.
well, it could
Mhm.
be something else, but it was a boat, and there I was with some people from who I was working with at the time. And one of the guys who was he's very bubbly and like he was quite not loud, but very just bubbly and having fun. He was just so chill and he was just sitting there looking around, at the reeds and the wildlife and the lovely
Mm.
gardens on the Broads as you go by. And
Yeah.
I said to him, "Are you okay?" And he said, "I just realized that my kids wouldn't even know this existed."
Oh,
because he lived in the city, and they'd never, really ventured out, I suppose, to countryside and broads and
yeah.
all of the lovely stuff that Norfolk has to offer. And he
Mm,
said, I just realized that they didn't know this existed. And so
wow.
what an amazing moment, so some of us
Mm,
are very, fortunate to be able to live and experience this
hmm.
beauty of being outside, but there's so many people that don't. And
Yeah,
so, and it was just a moment in time where I was like, yeah, that's right. There's so many people who just don't know this is here. And how beautiful
yeah,
gardens or countryside or that outdoor time in green space, how
yeah.
important that is to our well-being.
Yes, absolutely. And also seasonality. When you
Yeah.
have discovered that, you then have this very rich tapestry of,
Mm.
the differing seasons. I mean, here on my desk today, I have this lily of the
Oh,
valley, and
beautiful.
I had forgotten how perfumed it is.
Mm.
And how, I mean, it's utterly transporting. I mean, my favorite
Yeah,
plant is not, flower, is actually a tuberose, which of course you can't really
beautiful.
grow in this
No,
country
but
that
very
well. But
beautiful.
yeah, and this smell is actually not that far off it,
Okay.
interestingly.
Mm.
Anyway, I find having this on my desk or something
Mm.
like it, very uplifting.
Yeah,
And of course this is a snapshot in time. This will be gone in a
yeah.
in a while, and then, onto the rest of the year. But
That's the joy of it, I think,
yeah,
that for me being the
exactly.
joy.
Yeah.
So you were talking about kind of the different areas in your wall garden, where
Hmm.
one area might be drier than another, and
Mm.
you're sort of in a frost pocket. So if someone's trying to kind of understand their own garden, what should they perhaps be looking at in terms of like conditions and microclimate? Because even
Mm.
one small garden can be very different one end to the other, can't it?
Very, very. I mean, well, the first thing to do, of course, is just observe. Just sit in it and observe. Don't do anything. And see where the sun rises and sets, and see where the light is full, see where it's partially shady, and then see where it almost never gets the sun. And that would be my first thing to do, because light is for a plant for photosynthesis, and I was a biologist at university. I mean, I like to take things back to the biology of things. um is completely crucial, followed swiftly by water, obviously. But yeah, I think the first thing you should do is have a good look at the light in your garden, and perhaps don't try and tackle the whole thing in one go. Take an area and develop that. um, and then once you've done that, then it's very important to understand your soil type.
Yeah.
And in my case, I don't know how you've done it in the past, but I have found a little soil meter to be a pretty useful thing to have. They're not expensive, and it's actually very helpful to know that you can't really grow rhododendrons because you just don't have, ericaceous soil or acid soil.
Hmm.
Um, so, I think knowing early on what you can and can't do with your soil is helpful. I've been incredibly impressed generally by how incredibly robust Norfolk soil is generally. I
Hmm.
haven't had to put a lot of stuff on it, and that's been really good. I mean, I've planted small plants. I think they're called P9s. It's a very small sort of little, seedling. And my goodness, give it 3 or 4 years, and you've got a serious beast on your hands. And then I'm not really that good at pruning. So this is the thing that I have to get better at, is actually managing something that really takes off, because that's a whole nother skill set. Um,
I
um,
love it when plants take off.
yeah,
I don't like pruning. Honestly,
no, I
I
don't
want it
like it
to I
either.
kind of like the plant to do its thing and but I know sometimes obviously we do need to prune, but I'm with you on that. I'm not That's not the best thing in my toolkit, if you
No, I find it
like.
very scary actually, because you feel like you might be cutting at the wrong time, or that it
Yeah.
flowers on new wood or it flowers on old wood. And of course, one type of plant that that we all adore, that climbs up walls and goes everywhere, the clematis, has so many different varieties, and
Mm.
you don't treat them the same at all. So
They
they are
have different pruning groups, right? So you kind of
exactly,
need to know what
yeah,
variety you have to
yeah.
know when and how to prune. Yeah.
Exactly. So the first thing is light, the second thing is soil, and then I would say you've got to look at moisture and rain in your area. So, in the east of England, we're in what's technically known as a rain shadow. So we often find that by the time the clouds get here, having crossed with the prevailing wind, they've dumped all their beautiful rain somewhere else. Which is why I think Beth Chatto's dry garden is so inspiring, because obviously things are getting drier and warmer, and we need to plant sustainably, for our own souls and also for our whole world. And so I would have a look at the moisture levels. And again, I have a little moisture indicator which I really love to use, because overwatering is a disaster and so easy to do. I mean,
Yeah.
actually, things can dry out a lot more than we give them credit for. And of course, stuff needs to learn to live in a dry environment. So, I get it when you're putting in a P9, you do need to put the
You do
water
need
on
to.
it. Yeah.
Hmm.
But once it's got an established root base, then, you don't need to be crazy about this. And hopefully it will be in the right place, and it will have, it'll be able to be resilient. That's the word I want,
That's
resilient.
the word. It is about resilience, isn't it? Where I garden here in Norfolk, the soil is very sandy. So,
Hmm.
nutrients and moisture, they just drain away, drain through. It's very free draining. And I have a very thick mulch on. Every year I do a really good thick mulch, and I
Yep.
barely ever water. Now, I'm not
Amazing.
even here in the country all year round. And I have people who say to me, I don't understand how your garden or your allotment looks like this when you're
Yeah.
not even here half of the time. And I say it's the right plant, it's resilience,
Yeah.
and it's mulch.
Yeah.
That's so important, because also we do need to think about water. So rainwater harvesting, that kind of thing is really important. But
Hmm.
we do need to grow gardens that are more resilient to being
Hmm.
in drought conditions or not being watered. But you're right, overwatering is far, far worse than underwatering. That's
Yeah.
my experience.
Me too.
And definitely for, people who will come to me and ask questions, oh, why am I killing this, or why is this happening? I can almost always guarantee it's overwatering. In
Yeah.
any condition, it's generally overwatering.
I
Um,
totally agree.
so you're right, knowing your moisture levels are really, really important. Um, and what you were saying, going back to kind of like that microclimate in a garden, with one garden having completely
Mm.
different environments. Do you work with those environments, or do you try to alter them? Like, can you paint a picture of what it might look like in practice to have a area that has different environments? Like, what does that
Mm.
mean?
Well, I mean, exactly like the wall garden example we had before. Because it's a confined space, the wind does different things in there, and so on the north-facing walls, it's really very damp and hardly ever gets any light. And then on the south-facing wall opposite, it's absolutely boiling. So
Mm,
I would strongly advise, in my amateur way, not to fight it, but
mm.
to absolutely embrace these natural conditions and plant appropriately. Because, I mean, it's a bit like going to therapy and hoping that the person that you love will change. The answer is they don't.
Yeah.
They aren't going to. You've got to you work with what you've got.
I
And
absolutely love that, Diana. That's the key, because I think we always see things like, oh, I don't know, I've got this garden and I really want to amend the soil to be more acidic, so I'm just going to apply this and ericaceous compost. But you're going to be doing that forever, and the
yeah,
plant isn't going to be resilient. And so
no,
working with that soil that you've got is so, so important, all the aspect and all of that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think being able to talk to somebody on the spot when you fall in love
Yeah.
with a plant, and actually describe your specific area or situation, it gives you a very different experience to
Mm,
going to a beautiful garden center. And I do love going to a garden center. I mean,
of
it's a bit
course.
like being in a sweet shop for me. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, but a plant fair is a different thing altogether. You've got the time to actually speak to these nurserymen and women. You've got the time to browse different nurseries. Let's say I have a particular passion for iris. And I don't know whether you love iris. I mean, they aren't lasting all year, of course. They're very much in May, but the variety and the sheer drama of them is so exciting, and the way that our event at Plant Lovers Day falls, it's usually very good for irises. And this year we've got Seagate Nurseries back. They used to be Seagate Irises, which was absolutely the national collection holder. Now it's a broader nursery and has other
Yeah.
plants as well, but they still has incredible iris. And I just cannot believe the colors, the shapes, and how well they do. The fact that you can split them in your own garden after a few years and have double the quantity. I
Yeah.
mean, they are, I think, one of life's absolute joys.
They are absolutely fabulous. And I will give a shout out to Seagate Nurseries because we did have them on the podcast. We went to
Oh,
the
did you?
garden. Yes, we visited them. And it was when all the iris were in bloom, the garden's there, and it was just phenomenal. It was like a watercolor
Yeah,
painting across the garden at the back of their nursery. And also, I absolutely loved the Cedric Morris garden at Chelsea. Did you see that? I
I
mean,
did.
oh my gosh,
Yeah,
it was just
yeah,
my favorite garden of all time. It was
yeah,
just stunning. So I'm with you on the iris. They are absolutely beautiful. So for anyone who's listening to this, being able to come along to the Plant Lovers Day and speak
yeah,
directly to Seagate Nurseries about growing iris is do it. Absolutely go. They're
yeah.
stunning.
And if you're lucky enough to have a pond, you can just have your flag iris, or if you have a border, you can put in some of these more modern cultivars that are just absolutely, I mean, from bright blue to purple to sort of lion-like with stripes. I mean, it's just, you can't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I,
Absolutely.
I
I
mean,
love your passion about irises.
I've never been a breeder of plants, and never done the biology of that. I mean, I vaguely understand the sort of genetics of it, but I have to say, giving birth to something like that and have it become, plant of the year at Chelsea or whatever must be so exciting. And I love every year
Yeah.
not quite knowing what it's going to be that hits
Yeah.
the top. And
And
plant
sometimes you
lovers,
question why. I
yeah,
question why. I'm
I
like,
know,
what? Why that one? Like, I totally thought it would be another one, you know?
yeah,
I love that. Yeah, it's very exciting. I quite agree.
yeah,
Um, yes. So, Diana, like for someone who doesn't know where to start, like what's your
mm,
go-to resources or way to research a plant properly? So obviously we're going to say the Plant Lovers Day actually
yeah.
speak to the growers of these plants. Like what ways
Yeah.
other than that would you research?
Well, obviously, we're very lucky in the age in which we live to have large language models and to have effectively encyclopedias online. So the Kew Gardens Plants of the World online is an absolutely incredible resource for working out the origin story of plants, which is helpful. But I do love a book. And I don't think you can beat a book written by a woman I used to work with at the Royal Academy of Arts. And this isn't a shameful plug because the book has been out for a while, but I don't know if you've ever seen this, The Apprehensive Gardener by Griselda
No.
Carr.
Okay.
Well, it goes through every a month of the year and basically tells you in a short paragraph what to do with the plant that will need tending to at that time. You
Okay.
cannot believe what a fantastic short reference it is.
Yeah.
So, if you're, if it, and this is not complicated, it's a question of, okay, so I have salvias, it's April, and I want to know what to do. It will tell you in 3 sentences. And
Wow.
actually, that is a cool resource. And she, rather like the woman who also wrote the famous book, Right Plant, Right Place. I don't know if you ever saw that book. It's out of print now, but you can kind of get it in secondhand places. I think she was called Nicola Ferguson. Um, this lady, Griselda Carr, a bit like Nicola Ferguson, um, basically spent 20 years educating herself the hard way about how to make her garden in Yorkshire work. It, and this was her answer to helping you and me actually do it without so much pain because it is difficult. The bigger the space, the more challenging it is. And
Mm.
so I'm a fan of books, I'm a fan of online resources, I'm obviously a fan of plant fairs. And I think we're very, very lucky that these days, it's pretty easy to get the information
Yes.
if you look for it.
Just spend the time, do a little research. That's the
Yeah,
important thing, isn't it?
exactly. Yeah.
Earlier on, we touched a few times on, the idea of a plants man, plants woman.
Yeah.
What sets a true plants person apart from a typical garden center experience, would you say?
Well, it's the depth of knowledge.
Mm.
They actually have specific knowledge. I mean, a lot of the people who come to my fair are specialists in a certain kind of thing. So iris or hostas or salvias or roses, and I think the depth of knowledge that you can get for that. I mean, in the case of roses, um, we're very lucky to have something called Cottage Memories. And they do a lot of standard roses, and you can say, look, I have very interesting rose demands. I want a perpetual flowering rose. I want one that doesn't suffer from,
Mm.
disease too much. You can ask all these questions and actually have the woman say, okay, are you going to be okay at pruning and tending, and or are you a bit sort of like let it ramble? And then they give you the exact one.
Mm.
So, I think that's the difference. If you are lucky enough to just go to your local garden center and be like the kid in the sweet shop, it's unlikely you're going to find the depth of knowledge easily in there. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing that sets a plant fair apart and sets apart from. I mean, because before COVID, I don't know if you found this, there were a lot of the nurseries that come to plant fairs used to welcome people. But a
Mhm.
lot of them now have retracted their staff numbers. They sell a bit online. They attend plant fairs, but you can't turn up,
Yeah.
and that is hard for people
No,
because it's not
agreed.
quite as easy to go and
Yeah.
see these people. So somehow, if they're going to come to Helmingham Hall or wherever, or Creake Abbey, you can actually talk to them.
Yeah, agreed. And isn't it wonderful how in horticulture we want to spread the knowledge and the love? So
Yeah.
gardeners love to talk about gardening, yeah, and plants, and
Mm.
we love to share what we've learned. So don't be scared to go and ask questions, because
No.
and if you think it's a silly question, oh, it's not a silly question. I think a lot of new people into gardening think, well, I don't, I'll feel silly if I ask that question. But you don't need to feel like that at all because gardeners love to
Yeah,
share. They want your garden to grow. They
they
want
do.
the plants that you've bought to do well.
Yep, exactly. And I think that's the thing. They want to give you the information, and there is
Mm.
no such thing as a silly question. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Um, I once ran a rather hilarious panel discussion during one of our plant lovers days, and I asked people to bring in things that had got a disease or a problem and they didn't know what to do with it. And all these people flooded in with little plastic bags with sort of dodgy leaves in and stalks, and that was all fine. And the panel of fabulous people looked at these things and told them what to do. But then I was left with all these, really toxic issues. And I suddenly had this sort of moment where I realized I must carefully take them out of the plastic bags, dispose of them appropriately, and burn the rest before
Yeah.
I had an absolute disaster on my hands. Um, so I've thought twice about opening myself up now to that kind of plant infestation panel because it actually is a bit like scary.
If lots of people brought different diseases and things
Yeah,
in, it could
yeah.
literally wipe out your beautiful walled garden.
Exactly. That was about 10 or 15 years ago. And I remember it was a really fun thing to promote, but it was really tough to sort out afterwards.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh my gosh. Um, so how once someone finds a plant, so they've come along to the Plant Lovers Day, they found a plant and they've spoken to, the plants people there and they put it in the garden and of course it thrives because they're planting it exactly where they have been told to plant it and they've got the right plant for the right place. What would you encourage them to do next? So they've found a plant that thrives super well in their garden. What next?
Well, I would try to take cuttings. I mean, it isn't easy. It's a bit scary that, but I
Yeah.
would encourage all people to do that because it's incredibly good value for them. And, a little bit of rooting powder goes a long way. So I don't have a really posh greenhouse. I have a polytunnel. It's perfectly fine. And I have successfully, experimented with everything from geraniums to salvias, with less success in that respect. But, I would definitely give it a go. So, suitable conditions, a bit of gentle watering, or try to collect the seeds. I mean, seed heads are wonderful. I don't know how much you get time to do that, but actually, the pride you get if you manage to cultivate something yourself. And of course, the colors might be slightly different, but
Mhm.
it doesn't matter. Look what you've created.
Yeah, and that's going back to what we were saying about having a resilient garden. Really, if you've got something that thrives really well, it will go to seed. You collect the seed, you resow those seeds. You're keeping everything kind of in your garden, thriving. It's a lovely process of
Yeah.
learning how to grow and the seasonality of plants as well, isn't it?
Exactly, exactly. And people, I often see wonderful stalls on the roadside with people who've divided their irises or collected seeds and
Yeah.
grown far too many of something. And you can pick up some absolute bargains from people who want to sell for very little,
Mhm.
or to a wonderful local fete like the kind we have in 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 this wonderful country that we live in. I don't know if
Mhm.
they do those sorts of things in North Carolina, but that is a sort of one-off thing, the plant stall, at a
Yeah.
fete. But you can definitely share the love from your
Yeah.
garden by
You
by taking those things.
You can share the love, I agree. And what a lovely way to show love for people and the planet to do that. Where we are
Mm,
in North Carolina, when I first moved there, I really struggled to find like the gardening community and these kind of things. But now I have, it is
mm,
there. It's just America's so big. So I don't think that the knowledge and information moves so quickly. It doesn't move across the whole of the US. There's pockets of,
yeah.
kind of gardening clubs or fetes or selling plants, that kind of thing around, but it's kind of
Mm,
not everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in England, I
yeah.
feel like it's everywhere now.
Yeah, I think we're pretty big plant people here.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't
I
think you
mean,
can beat it.
no, my mum comes from Michigan, and of course it's brutal in winter, or used to be.
Yes.
And so they didn't really have borders and things like that. They had lawns that went down to lakes and things and
Mm.
beautiful trees, but they didn't really. I mean, there's nothing quite like an English herbaceous border. I mean,
Right.
that is a absolutely unbelievable artistic and
Mhm.
biological treat for the senses.
Yeah, absolutely it is. I done a talk for a garden called Winghaven, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I talked about Great British Gardens, and
Yeah.
it was all the photographs and talking about our lovely deep herbaceous borders that we have and the architectural nature of them and what might be planted in
Mm.
the back and through the middle, and everyone was just like, whoa, whoa,
Exactly,
wow,
exactly. You can't believe them
incredible.
until you see them, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we have touched on the kind of how this all ties into sustainability, but perhaps you could,
Mm.
kind of close off the podcast episode before we come back to Plant Lovers Day, how this approach ties into sustainability and working closely with nature. What does it kind of mean?
Well, I mean, we've all got to be more sustainable. We're facing a changing climate. And I think sustainable gardening is definitely good for the environment. We want to do less watering. We've talked about watering. We don't want to be using the hose as very much at all, except when perhaps getting something going. So I think if you are planting carefully and you're having success and you're actually able to collect seeds and cuttings and so on, that is good for the planet. And that makes your garden healthier. It makes your whole interaction with it more sustainable, and you won't need to water as much because you'll be putting the plant in the right place, and you'll know that it's going to work. So that's excellent. And I think things that are in the right place and are not requiring extra inputs in any way are going to flower for longer. They're going to fruit for longer. You're going to have fantastic um outcomes actually on your doorstep. I mean, I have a cutting garden because every year I love to have flowers in the house, and I have been working with dahlias now for many years, and I cannot believe the different colors and types of dahlias and how long lasting they are. I'm still putting dahlias in my house in November from the
Yeah.
cutting garden, and I mean that to me brings real joy.
Yeah.
Absolute real joy. And of course, fruiting trees. Again, I mean, there's nothing quite like having your own green gage tree and making jam or crumble, or, I mean, plums generally are an incredible asset.
Yeah.
Apples and pears, and it's good for the bees, it's good for the whole ecosystem, because we're all part of an ecosystem, and we need to remember that we are as much a part of it as anything else, and we've slightly lost our connection to the land and to the cycle of life, I think. And I would like to go back and make sure everybody understands that they are a tiny, tiny speck of grain on the beach of eternity, but they are in a cycle of life, and you
hmm
have to be responsible for the little
Yeah.
bit of ground that you're on.
Absolutely. We make an impact, don't we? So you make it positive,
Yeah.
however little, make it a positive impact. I love that. So let's just circle back to Plant Lovers Day. Tell us where exactly you are, what the times are, and where people can buy tickets.
Okay, thank you. So Creake Abbey is on the North Norfolk coast, about 3 miles south of Burnham Market, which is a charming little village, on the Fakenham Road. So it's probably about an hour's drive from Norwich. And the event is on Saturday, the 16th of May, and there's a £5 entry charge if you're 16 years and above, but you can absolutely come, bring your dogs on leads, and enjoy the day. The shops and the cafe at Creake Abbey are free to enter. You don't absolutely have to go to Plant Lovers Day. We are an open all year round place that doesn't charge anything. But just for this event, we charge £5 per person to enter if you're over 16, because we're supporting the hospice. And you can find all the details on our website, which is creakeabbey.co.uk. And, we want to celebrate the fact that these really wonderful nurseries are here for you. They want to see you, they want to talk to you, they want to help you on your gardening journey.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe I should change my flight back to the US.
Oh,
I really
please
want to
come.
come. I really want to come.
Oh, well, if you can't come this year, maybe we'll be lucky enough to have you come next year, which will be
One
the
year.
20th anniversary.
Is it next
Yeah.
year?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah, okay. Okay. I'm gonna have to do something about this. It's ridiculous that I've not got there yet. Diana, thank you so much. This has been a really lovely chat, and I think so many good tips as well for listeners, to right plant, right place at the end of the day. And just before we sign off, please can you remind us again of the book that you showed us by
Yes.
Griselda?
Carr, The
Yeah.
Apprehensive Gardener.
Okay.
And this
Perfect.
book is for people like me. I'm not a gardening expert by any means. I'm an enthusiast. I find joy in plants and gardens. And this is a brilliant guide, a really
Okay.
brilliant guide. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and spending an hour with me with our colds. I had to
Yeah.
keep muting and coughing in the background. So
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
it's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Transform your garden the easy way with Garden on a Roll. This is the perfect solution for beautiful ready-made borders. If you love the look of professionally designed planting but don't have the time, knowledge or patience to plan it yourself, Garden on a Roll has you covered. Garden on a Roll are supporting Series 20 of the Plant-Based Podcast. Each border by Garden on a Roll is expertly designed by award-winning garden designer Anthony Henn and delivered with a simple, pre-planned, biodegradable template that you just roll out and plant in one go. No guesswork, no stress, just follow the instructions and enjoy the results. Whether you're refreshing a tired space or starting from scratch, you'll get a cohesive, seasonal design that works with the plants chosen, which will thrive together and look good all year round. Choose your style and size, and everything you need is then delivered to your door. It is planting by numbers. Visit Garden on a Roll today and bring your outdoor space to life.